Welcome to another exciting edition to Grove City Hockey Presents
Hockey in our neck of the woods, and you, sir, were a very talked about person towards the end.
I'm a fifth-year senior, kind of. Well, it's my sixth year of college. Incredible.
Hey guys, we want to say thank you to our sponsor, Cut Shield, for bringing you this episode. Make sure you check them out on the link below and use the promo code for 25% off your order. Used by all 32 NHL teams and players, Cut Shield is the premier protective player clothing designed by players for players. Their innovative cut-resistant clothing has prevented serious injury to numerous players, including over 30 NHL players. Cut Shield gives you the peace of mind to go out and play without worrying about injury. Use our promo code Grove City Hockey, all lowercase and no space, for an additional 25% off your order today. Welcome to the GCH podcast. I'm your host, Ben W. Stock, and with me is a very special guest. I have Dana Anderson Helmstrom. How you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. So we're here to talk about Team Tucker, right? This is a story that it's a project that is very near and dear to your heart as well. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, very dear to my heart. My firstborn child. In 2006, I had Tucker, and then two daughters after. Tucker, Casey, and Sierra are my children. And moving along, single mom after a few years, and the four of us were nothing but, just a pack. Tucker played hockey, and Casey and Tucker are 15 months apart, so they're on the same hockey teams. And same practice, whereas the little one, the youngest, just sat with me in the stands. And then same baseball teams, huge athlete. All my kids are great athletes. And then cruising along, got a new house in a different city in Minnesota and living in Hopkins, Minnesota. Going to school. This was the picture back here. I actually worked at the school my children all attended. And this was a great year. This was Tucker's third grade year. Casey was in second grade, and my youngest, Sierra, had just made it to kindergarten, and I worked there as the special education teacher. So we were all four together, and life was going perfectly until 2 months after that picture. That's the first day of school. 2 months after, Tucker's knee was really hurting, and we figured it was either baseball or just how he normally runs around. But hockey had also started. He was doing hockey clinics, fall ball, typical, both he and Casey were in that. And after Halloween, on Halloween night, he couldn't even go trick-or-treating because it hurt too much. So that was beyond significant, and rushed him, got an emergency appointment at a specialty clinic. They got us an MRI right away, and the world changed tremendously on November 4th when I found out he had osteosarcoma, which is a bone cancer. His right femur, 4 inches of his right femur was bone cancer. The cancer cells actually replicate themselves kind of like a coral. So they're really they're strong. They're like bone cells, but brittle. So devastating news. So my 9-year-old, he was about to turn 9, and we did the best we could. We got him into treatment. We had thought it was going to go well. He had just made Mite 4s. The top team, and he was happy. And then I hid the news from him for a couple weeks. And then it started. He found out. We started chemo. And as a single mom with the 3 kids, trying to do it all and get him through chemo. He was just turned 9 on November 30th, and so Sierra, his little sister, was 7.5, turned 8 during the chemo, and the youngest one was 5. And so it was just, the cancer was determined. I was determined to get through it. I actually wrote this book. This was our journey. There's nothing we can't do. My poor little, and as you can see in this picture, it ended up that the cancer kept spreading. So Tucker did need to get his leg amputated as a 9.5-year-old. And what I think I shared with you at the hockey expo was when the orthopedic surgeon told him he'd need to have his leg removed, he let out a scream that I can still hear. And he yelled out, "But I'm a hockey player."
Right.
And so, yeah, there's no stand-up hockey players. It was above the knee. There's no prosthetic for that. But, true to my motto, there's nothing I can't do. My son was amazing. And he actually, this is a story that gets everyone. It was a Wednesday night. His Mite 4 coach said, "You know what, instead of just watching the game, we were in the hospital." His chemo was Monday through Saturdays. And he said, "We have a game Saturday, and if you're feeling up to it, do you want to be my assistant coach on the bench?" And Tucker was elated and like, "Really?" And he looked up to this coach. He was D. St. Hubert's his coach, and his sons were on the team. And he agreed, like, "Yep, I'll be there, coach. I'll be there." He gets out of the hospital about 2, and the game was at about 6. Well, then it was Thursday that he found out he would be getting amputated the next week. And so I was upset and I didn't want to go. And so we got home Saturday and I said, "Honey, you don't have to go to this. It's too much. He didn't want anyone to know he would be losing his leg next week." And he said, "But Mom, that's my team. You show up for your team."
Yeah.
So knowing he would never skate again, he still went there in his wheelchair with his immobilizer on his leg. And the wheelchair didn't even fit in the bench. We had to I lifted him up. His coach got the wheelchair in, and he went on to coach. The coach was awesome. He let him do the whole speech between the second and third period.
That's so cool.
And Tucker was pretty proud of it because he came back. I had been crying over in the stands and trying to hide from people, but he was pretty proud because they were down 3-0 in the first 2 periods. And the fourth period, it ended 3-1 or something, or 3-2. And he said, "Mom, did you see which period we won?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "We only won the 3rd period. And guess which one I coached?" And he's like, I go, "What'd you tell him?" He said, "Well, I told him." He's like, "God, they have to back check harder. Like, that's why you can't leave your D alone." He goes, "The forwards need to back check harder and everyone needs to get to every loose puck." And sure enough, I don't know. That was the only period they scored 2 goals. So Tucker was very motivational. He went on to get his amputation and still showed up to every hockey game and coached when he wasn't in the hospital. And then we went into the baseball season. Tucker's even a better baseball player than he was hockey player. And sure enough, he showed up to those games too. A lot of tears behind the scenes. That's what I share in my book, is what he showed the community was pure strength. But as a mom and privately he cried so hard that he couldn't be playing baseball, but he would wipe his tears and still show up. Every time I gave him the out, just to say, "Hey, this is too much. You're 9.5 and you can't play sports, so."
Right.
But he showed up and he coached. He always did warm up at first base. Every inning they rolled him out, and he would do the warm up at first base. And the coach is still a friend of mine and on the board of Team Tucker. And I said, "I'm also a coach. I was a baseball coach, soccer coach." And I said, "You weren't just trying to include my son." And he's like, "What do you mean?" I said, "You put the bald kid with one leg in a wheelchair at first base for every practice and warm up." And I said, "You were trying to get the throws more accurate." And he's like, "Exactly." Because you're throwing to your buddy with one leg. You're going to focus, because these are 9-year-old boys, right? You're going to focus. And he coached them. It worked. He coached the coach, and Tucker had his assistant coach outfit. And late in June, they won the championship. Tucker was there. At that point, his health was really failing, and he even needed oxygen. He had the tube in his nose, even on the bench, still there every time. And, they won the championship. Sadly, a couple weeks later, after the championship game, Tucker did pass away. The cancer had spread everywhere, and he made it through a night in the NICU and came home. And his last place, when we released him on hospice, his sister Casey, his best friend, had a championship game at the same field that he always played. And I asked if he just wanted to go home, and he said no, he wanted to go to Casey's game. And so we went. The whole family went, cheered her on in the championship game, and then a couple days later, he passed away in my arms on our couch. Was surrounded by family and friends, and then continued to, just be a presence. And what Team Tucker is, Team Tucker Play Laugh Love, is during the cancer battle. Tucker had a fight song, which is, the Rachel Platten's The Fight Song, and the refrain he would sing. We would listen to it on Mondays on the way to the hospitals, where I may only be one match, but I can make an explosion.
Yeah.
And I went to so we had a nice little funeral home here in Hopkins, but I was not going to let my 9.5-year-old boy be buried around celebrated in a nursing or a funeral home, which was like mauve and forest green from the 80s. So I had asked our local rink, we only have one sheet of ice here, and I had asked them because the ice comes out for summer for us.
Yeah.
And they said, sure. And his celebration of life we had at the ice rink in Hopkins. And turns out that I didn't do the counting, but I was told that over 1,000 people showed up for my 9.5. And this is he died July 2nd. So even with the 4th of July holiday. So the celebration of life was July 7th. And over 1,000 people came to honor my son and tell me amazing stories about how much, positive impact he had on them. And then the following day was his funeral, and the pastor, we don't even belong to a church. We went to my ex-husband's sister's church, and he said that was the biggest attendance he had ever seen. There was over 800 people there. And so when I was coming home from that, I immediately, knew. I said, my God, my son was one match. A 9.5-year-old little boy made that explosion. There's 1,000 people with love in their heart and compassion, and that know his story, and good people honoring my son. And I just knew, I was compelled that it was my job as his mom to now scoop up this 1,000 units of love and do something with it, because he did the explosion, but he's not here. He created the legacy, and it's my job as a mom, as his mom, the mom of an amazing boy who, my daughters are great too, but there was something special that he reached so many people. And so I started within a month, I decided it. And within 4 months, I organized the first meeting for Team Tucker Play Laugh Love. Celebration of the fact that he played sports, and he played with friends every day. He made friends everywhere he went and just wanted to play with kids, adults, grandpas, anything. And he laughed. He was the doctor's favorites and the nurses. He was always cracking jokes, always making people laugh. His classmates would just tell him, come back. We miss you. We miss laughing. We miss your funny jokes. And he loved everyone. He, whether they're good athletes or not, he included everyone. Driving to the hospital, he actually had panic attacks and would try to jump out of the car. I'd have to have somebody else drive, and I'd have to sit in the back and restrain him, because he hated needles and he hated going to the hospital because he'd be away from his friends and his sisters, most importantly. And but the only time he calmed down was at the top of the exit ramp where there was a homeless person, and he would stop crying, and he would, insist that we find my purse, and he would give $5. Got to the point where on Sunday nights for packing, he would remember to pack $5 for whichever homeless person was there. And he always took care of kids, if they were crying or anyone was upset, he would stop whatever he was doing and go take care of them. So just a boy full of, everything. And, a practical joker. He played pranks on his grandma. So we started Team Tucker Play Laugh Love.
Yeah, that's awesome. Sounds like, Tucker, and he's still touching everybody around him even now. Right. And with the help of you and your message, it was something that when Sean and I had stopped at your booth, we just felt like, hey, we have to be able to. We wanted to get you on this pod. We wanted to get your story out there, not only to, to help promote, but to actually just to get more, it out there,
Yeah.
because here he's been gone for a few years,
Yeah.
but yet his message is still going very, very strong. You were saying at the Let's Play Hockey Expo that your first year you only had, I think, 4 VIPs, and now you're over
Yep.
over 75 or over 79, and then now you have your first international VIP, which is incredible.
Right. Yeah. Tucker died 6.5 years ago. Well, it'll be 7 years in July. And we started, so this program's been going for 5.5 years, Team Tucker. We started with just baseball, Sandlot. Tucker's favorite movie was Sandlot. And I didn't think I could go into the cancer world. And so I was just bringing baseball to lots of communities, and Tucker's, easier game. You can't really introduce hockey to kids because it's a lot of equipment. So we started with baseball. And of course, in Minnesota, it's cold enough that we probably could have. But and then after a couple of years, the thing I kept working on, this very important patients program, is it all started that it was 3 weeks, maybe 4 after his amputation in March. We were in the hospital again, of course. Every other week we were in for chemo, and I'd roll him. I called it a daily field trip, and just to get out of the room, and we'd go through. I'd push him in his wheelchair and go through the hospital and check things out. And we were returning to his room on the floor 5, and he said, "Mom, bend down." And he whispered to me. He said, "Do you see that boy in there, in that room?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "He hasn't had a visitor all week." And this was a Thursday. And I said, "Wow." And I had noticed that, but I'm a special ed teacher, social worker. Like, that's my thing, is to always worry about others, right? I'm not 9 and amputated and missing my hockey season. And I said, "Yeah, I've noticed that." And he said, "And look, Mom, in 2 more rooms, there'll be a little girl. She hasn't had a visitor yet either." And I said, "I know, isn't that sad?" And he said, "No one should be alone when they're in the hospital." He looked at me and he said, "Mom, when I get better, I'm going to come back and visit kids." He said, "I want to play with kids because I don't want anyone to be alone."
Oh.
And there's so many moments that my pride for my son was so overwhelming. And that was one of them, because I'm the one who's restraining him to go to the hospital. That's how much he hates it. He actually called it, he was a bird trapped in a nest and everyone can fly away except him. He hated, having to be in the hospital. But despite that, and instead of the first thing he wants to do is get back on the rink or get back on the field, here's my 9.5-year-old boy saying, "I'm going to come back to hospitals." So I kept working on a program in the background, trying to figure out, and I couldn't. First 2-3 ideas failed, wouldn't work medically, HIPAA wise, all these things. And finally I tripped on to, well, wait, what about we bring people by your side? Like, we will bring your team by your side. And it started with the concept of anyone who's stuck in the hospital, if you're missing, whether it's family or friends or teammates, Team Tucker will pay for the gas or the rental car. Our second one was airfare. Our second VIP, our first one was a boy with kidney failure, and he was here from South Dakota. He was here for 3 months, and his dad and siblings couldn't afford to come see him. So here he's 16 and living with just his mom. So we paid for all the gas and the hotels, and he came over. And our second one, this was in 2019, was a boy graduated high school and needed to come up for bone marrow transplant for cancer. And then the bone marrow, that didn't happen. And so sure enough, now he's on month 4 being in the Twin Cities. He's from Texas. All of his other friends had gone off to college. And his best friend wanted to come visit, but couldn't afford to, obviously. So we flew up his best friend. And as a school psychologist, I know you need, and bringing my son through it, you need your mental health in order to fight for your physical health. So the real focus of the VIP program is while you're in the trenches, like while you're suffering and depressed and, getting, whether it's amputated or getting, bone marrow transplant, people can't leave their room for 28 days. And and then you can't leave for 100 days, and the area, and it's just ungodly. Tucker had a visitor every day that I had him in the hospital. So we flew up his friend, and sure enough, the mom couldn't believe it. He walked for a mile, and he gained 3 pounds just during. He had given up. He was just discouraged, and he was losing weight. Gained 3 pounds in the weekend, and his whole attitude changed. So I knew I was onto something with this, like, we'll get your team by your side concept.
Absolutely.
Well, then COVID hit. 2020 hit, and no visitors, no anything. So I tweaked the program, and what it is now, Tucker's very important patients. Everything we do at Team Tucker is sports related. So our VIPs will get you. So, like, this is our little slogan. Sick kids need to play, laugh, and be surrounded by love. And so that we just get a request in, and we what do you need? Sometimes it still is like, especially like bone marrow transplant people on day 100 when they can get out. We've either flown or driven, paid for the gas and the food for people to get up and see these kids when they finally get released. A lot of times it's toys, especially the little kids. We get them toys while they're stuck in the hospital for so long. Older kids, we get them gift cards so they can shop online. And then these, leukemia is one of our frequent cancers. It's a 2.5-year treatment. And with COVID, and even without COVID, the kids are too sick to travel, like on a plane or in hotels, because their, blood cell counts are so low. That's one thing we do, is we get them like an Airbnb or VRBO and get a family getaway. Here, the Minnesota families, I'd like to send them to Duluth, where there's good hospitals should something go wrong. But they're out in the woods, and they feel like they're on a vacation, and they're together as a family and not in the hospital, and they spend time, and that's what they need to rejuvenate, to just get ready for more battling. Sometimes it's kids that are about to pass, and family members can't afford to come say goodbye. I just last week flew in grandparents from Costa Rica in time to say goodbye to their 18-year-old grandson as he was dying. We've brought in another grandpa to say goodbye to a 2-year-old. And sometimes it's, I had a kid on hospice who was 18, and he was going to die within the next week or two. And it was his mom's birthday, and he didn't have enough money for a birthday present. And he really wanted to get something. So then I do all the shopping, and the part I love about it is I know what these families are going through. And so, especially leukemia, when there's a relapse. Had a VIP whose daughter relapsed 2 days on a Wednesday. Her birthday was a Friday, and she was going to graduate. And they said, well, what do we do? We have to. The only treatment left was in San Francisco. And I said, you celebrate her birthday. And I do all the shopping for, the airfare and get the right flight. And so they end up with 3 emails. They have their itinerary, their car rented, and their hotel. And I like to do all that extra work, because when Tucker was battling, as I wrote in my book, I had a big family, and my family was by my side every day. And I was able to, I want to pay that forward. Like, you're too overwhelmed as a mom to even start thinking of, how to start looking for the right hotel and those kind of things. So yeah, when I saw you, we were at 75 VIPs. And yesterday I got my 82nd VIP request. Another heartbreaking story. He's 18. He was in his senior year. He had come to Mayo. They thought it was a weird something, and it turns out it's cancer. So now he's from New Mexico. He's missing the spring of his senior year. And Team Tucker, what his request was, could he go back? He couldn't afford to fly back just for graduation, because he won't be done. He needs a round trip. But so Team Tucker is going to fly him back to New Mexico so that he can look forward, and that gives him something to look forward to for the next 2 months. And like I said, we really focus on when you're in the trenches. Like, what can I do to bring joy to you today, to make you play and laugh today, and get you excited that you can do this, you can make it through this battle. And I forgot to tell you, so that you did ask so the international VIP, that was a big one. That was in February. We got our first boy. He's 16. He's from Uganda. His name is Kyle. I learned so much about it. I didn't realize that they're an English first country and French. But so I went down to Mayo. Rochester Mayo Clinic is an hour and a half from the cities. Okay. And we went and picked him up, and he was a basketball fan. Obviously in Uganda, which I learned the temperatures range from the low all year long. Temperatures are between 71 and 85. Like that's it.
Isn't amazing, right?
I mean, in Minnesota, we go 35 degrees a day. You know, we wake up to 14 and go to, you know, and then we hit 60. So
Yeah.
it was crazy. But this poor boy, Kyle, he's 16, and it was kind of spooky because he, exact same age as Tucker. He was born 3 weeks to the day before Tucker. He's that mom's firstborn, and he has a little sister. And I actually hooked him up. We got him up to the cities. I brought him to a Timberwolves game. And I had Tucker's friends go with them. And I said, is it just me? And they said, oh my God, he's so funny. He's just like Tucker. So then I brought him up a second weekend. He loved it so much. And I brought him to his first hockey game. He had never seen hockey, even on TV. And I brought him to Tucker. Tucker would be on the varsity team or JV team right now. So I brought him to the Hopkins hockey team. And the team was so great. They had a dinner afterward that he was with, and then he went home to play Xbox with a couple boys. It was the first time Kyle had hung out with peers in 6 months of being down at Rochester. It was the first time, you know, he was just so excited. His parents were great. And, you know, that was the ultimate. That's just seeing their smiles. And, you know, he has a rod. He was able to keep his leg, unlike Tucker. Oh, and he has the same disease as Tucker.
Oh, wow. That's incredible.
Yeah, and same leg. But he was able to keep his leg with the metal rod. He'll never be able to run again or play basketball. You know, it's 16 years old, and you're never going to get to do that stuff.
That's crazy.
But he was still funny.
To be that young, to be able to hear that, you know, comes out of a doctor's mouth is like, hey, you know, like no matter what you love, you won't be able to do it right now.
Right. So you got to pivot and you got to do something else. And that's, you know, and that's just, you know, the joy of bringing some happiness and having them forget for a little while is, you know, that's the goal too. So yeah, we're at 82 right now, and I'm sure, you know, more will come in. I just really do appreciate donors and donations. We have an annual event. I didn't mention that where Tucker did go that last night before passing away in our house at that field. The community did decide, the baseball league named it after Tucker. So I designed, so it's Tucker Field officially on the city books is the Little League field here. And then the shooting room in the pavilion in the hockey rink is now named the Tucker Hellstrom Shooting Room. And that comes from, so have you heard of Shoot More and any famous hockey player talking about that?
Yeah, so, yeah, I was just going to mention that. Yeah, so I have heard Jason Zucker, who was a member of the Minnesota Wild, now is a member of the Pittsburgh Penguins, talking a little bit about Shoot More.
Yes, a little bit. So here's that picture. This is Tucker in the hospital with Jason and his wife, Kylie Zucker, right before they got married. Jason is amazing. He accidentally met Tucker during one of the Minnesota Wild's rounds of coming to visit kids in the hospital. And Jason he was surprised to find out because he had just been on the Minnesota Wild for a year and, you know, still getting his footing down. But Tucker's favorite player was Jason Zucker. For Tucker's 8th birthday, we had a mom-son date out to the Wild, and he showed me. He's like, look at this guy, you know. And I hadn't even heard of him yet because everyone at the day was worried about Parise and, you know, our Suter and the more famous players, Mikko Koivu. So, and I said, how do you like him? You know, and I said, is it because your names rhyme, you know, Zucker and Tucker? And he said, okay, at first it was that, Mom. He totally admits that. And he said, but then watch how he skates. He's just so fast. I just love, you know. So I knew of Jason for a year. And sure enough, the Wild came. And I thought I was this great mom because I had been working behind the scenes trying to get Jason to come. And so I heard the Wild was coming, and I didn't have many connections, but I tried my best. And so when Jason walked in, I was excited and ready. But then I find out later, you know, getting to know Jason, that he had never got the memo. word never got to him to make sure to see this one boy, Tucker Hellstrom. It was up to him to choose which floor, and he chose floor 5. And so fate the first time brought them together. And if you can believe this, I remembered it wasn't for a few years. I celebrate the anniversary of them meeting all the time, every year. It was actually on December 16th, which Jason's number and Tucker's number is 16.
Yeah.
So so they met, and he stayed in the room for a while, and it was great. And, that was, that night, Tucker and I fit perfectly in his hospital bed together. He was a little boy, and we were laying there to go to sleep. And that was the first night he said, "Mom, guess what? There's one good thing about cancer." And I said, "What is that, honey?" He said, "You get to meet your sports hero."
Wow.
I told Jason that, and Jason was in tears. So that was the first good thing. And so then amputation was February 5th. And so fate played, it was meant to be. It turns out a friend of mine where I used to live happened to work with a friend of Carly's, and who happened to hear, she was sad. She's like, "Oh, our neighbors, my former neighbor's friend's son is getting amputated," and blah, 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 and telling the whole story. And the friend said, "That sounds a lot like this boy that Carly talks about a lot." And she's like, "Carly? Yeah, they met him." And she said, "Jason and Carly haven't been able to stop talking about him, and they would love to come see him." So then I get Carly's number, and it was funny. She called, and my son's, I think it was while he was in the OR or the next day. And I said, she said, "What can we do? Jace wants to do something." And I said, "Well, if he could just send a sticker, a signed jersey, that would be amazing." And I remember her son was like, "No." And I was like, "How did she just say no to that?" And she said, "No, he wants to come visit." So Jason was actually the first non-family member to come visit. He was amputated on a Friday, and Jason came in on Monday, and Carly, and it was amazing. And we were excited, and he brought Tucker all the stuff. And of course, Tucker being the gregarious, friend, Jason's still standing there, and they've done everything. And I said, "All right, well, I'll let you leave." And Tucker looks up at him. He goes, "Why are you leaving?" And I said, "Tucker," and he's like, "Don't you want to stay and play Xbox?" And Jason's like, "Well, sure." And I'm like, "You don't have to." And he's like, "Of course I want to." So Jason stayed for 2 hours playing Xbox, and they would always choose like his buddies, Charlie Coyle and stuff, to like pick fights with on the screen. And those two just laughed for 2 hours. And then Jason, every time that Tucker was in the hospital, he either called or stopped by if he was in town, and played Xbox with Tucker for the rest of his treatment. And then, and what that shoot more thing is, because I would be always in the room. I never left the hospital. And, Jason would sit down, they'd start playing games. And at first Tucker would be like, he's like, "Well, that game, if the hospital didn't play the game, you won't believe this. My 9-year-old son would listen on a radio. I mean, there was no way. He just sat there and listened. Like, we had everything off, and, because the hospital only got the main, when they're on like that weird, off network. Once in a while, they're on an off network. And I'm like, oh, so we would sit there and listen. Well, he would sit with Jason and say, "Oh, Jason, you really need to shoot more." And he called him Jason, like no more calling him Zucker. And he's like, "That first period," he goes, "you were skating down," and he said, "you skated it right into the corner. You had a great shot at the top of the circle." And he's like, "And then that one time in the third period," he goes, "like, Carly, you had the way better shot, but you passed it off to Charlie. And then, like, you just really need to shoot more." And he's like, "That one shot in the second period, well, like, that was perfect." And then he also told him, he goes, "And you're the fastest on the team. You really need to back check harder." He's like, "They got to count on you and your speed to get back there." And they would just be chatting like this, and Jason would look at me sometimes. He's like, "God, I feel like I'm with Mike Yo, who was with the coach at the time." And he goes, "This is exactly what he tells me." And Mike and Tucker was nice about it, but and then one time he's like, "Well, there are times you're kind of a puck hog." He goes, "You should," he goes, "you like to skate around with it." And so that he would critique his game. And what Jason really got to him. So Jason brought him on a tour of the locker room, which was amazing. And the Wild organization would get Tucker tickets for games on like Saturdays, so he would have something to look forward to, and as best they could. And we were up there that's, carrying my son up there. We'd have his walker and his wheelchair, and I'm carrying him upstairs. And, they would let us park underground because of all of, it was just, I said in my book, there's nothing I can't do. I would do anything. The Wild was doing great things for my son, and it was up to me to get him to places and do things. And what really cemented their friendship was in the outdoor game. That was the first year that the Minnesota finally, which it should be a given that it's always in Minnesota, had the outdoor series game. And Jason, actually, Tucker was there, and he got 6 tickets. We were there freezing, and it was one of the happiest moments, because after our goal, we beat Chicago Blackhawks 6-1 was part of it, but Tucker started clapping for a goal, and he said, "Look, Mom, I'm clapping." And I said, "Well, of course, we just scored on the Blackhawks." He goes, "No, Mom, look." And he was standing because he had his one leg at this point, and it was his first time balancing. He could balance on his left leg and clap with both hands and not have to hold on to anything. So we go from that going, and it did get to the point where, I think I showed you at the expo, Tucker did teach himself how to shoot again on one leg. He, with a floor hockey stick.
Yep.
In the hospital, he would still shoot a puck. He taught himself to rollerblade again with just a walker and the one rollerblade. He did play baseball. He did play basketball at recess, leaning against his wheelchair. He went on to go back to sports as this little 9-year-old, trying to figure out how he can live a life without giving up sports. So Jason got a concussion at the end of near the end of the third period and of that game, and Tucker couldn't handle it. Tucker couldn't cheer anymore. He couldn't cope. He kept saying, and we were newly friends with Jason at that point, and he kept saying, "Mom, I can't go to sleep. Can you check with Jason? How is Jason?" Because you just get that he's on injured reserve.
Yeah.
And finally, it was the second day, and literally it was 11 at night. My son refused. He couldn't get it off his mind. So I did bother Carly and say, "I'm really sorry to bother you, but Tucker can't sleep at night. He is so worried about his friend Jason." And she said, "It is a minor concussion. He'll be back," and so we checked every day. And then that was the thing Jason shared with me at Tucker's memorial. He said, "Here's a 9.5-year-old boy with one leg fighting cancer, and he can't sleep because a 25-year-old who plays a game for a living is hurt." And he said he is the most caring, compassionate boy I've ever met, and so fun and so hilarious. He said, who wouldn't want to be friends with him? And I was like, I'm so used to my son being that caring that I was like, yeah, that is kind of weird. Like, he could have been worried about his own problems, but he always worried about everyone else's. So he always told Jason to shoot more. And sure enough, the day that we got the notice that I was told that he was going home on hospice that Wednesday, I texted Carly, or she texted me by coincidence. And that's back when Jason lived in Vegas for the summers. And she said, "How is it?" And all I said was, "It's not going well," or "Tucker's not doing well." And I get a text a few hours later, like, "Jason wants to take the red eye and come in and see him." I'm like, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. He's coming to say goodbye to my son. Well, I didn't find out till a week later that he didn't know he was dying. And I knew I didn't say it. He just thought he was having a tough time with the chemo. So Jason takes it on his own to fly in on a red eye from Vegas and come see Tucker. And he had no idea until he walked in and saw. In fact, it's one of Tucker's last full sentences and last conversations was with Jason, because that was on the Thursday. And he only said a couple sentences on, no, he didn't even say any more full sentences on Friday. So his last full conversation was with Jason on Thursday. And he gave Jason his trading card and his number 16 with his initials. And Tucker, I knew he had been practicing. Jason has a beautiful JZ for his autograph, and Tucker had practiced it, and he signed the back of his card, and I gave it to Jason. And so Jason left. He and Carly sat outside and cried it was over 20 minutes before they pulled away. They had no idea that now they knew that would be the last time they see him. And his celebration of life was a week later. And of course, Jason flies back in from Vegas. He got the contract with the Wild that morning for his 5-year extension. He said what happened, that day, before the week before. And he said what started as the happiest day ended up being a horrible day, because that was the same day Tucker passed away. But he flew back out, and sure enough, by the time he got to the celebration of life, 5 days after Tucker passed away, so Jason's a lefty, and on his left wrist, he put TH number 16 and shoot more. It's a shooting wrist. He purposely put it below his glove. He saw it for every game. That season, Jason had about 15 goals that Tucker was alive, 15 or 16. And that next season, with his tattoo and with Tucker as his angel, he had his personal record, I think, of 34 goals for the season.
That's amazing.
And he had Tucker by his side every time. He wrote Tucker's initials on his stick before every game and on the side of his skate every game. He put TH on it. And he went on to win the King Clancy Award. He started a nonprofit, and he said motivated by Tucker, he won the King Clancy Award for that a couple of years ago. And when he received it, he looked up and said, "This is for you, buddy." I know they would have stayed friends forever. Tucker was kind of going to be like Jason. I don't know if he would have made it to the NHL, but just caring and a nice guy. And so hockey and the Wild, and Jason still looks after us. Heartbreaking when he went to Pittsburgh, but I just texted him this week for the game, and he scored against the Wild. I always want Jason to score against us just to remind us of what we lost. And he did. And my family still wears Jason Zucker stuff all the time, and we still cheer for the Wild, but I'm like, okay, the best would be a 4-3 win with Jason getting a hat trick.
There you go. I love it. I love it.
That's our goal. So now, yeah, we're just plugging away here.
Yeah. So now, what can we do to help? What can we do to get involved with your organization?
Well, that would be great. We have, as a former teacher, as I mentioned, I have two levels. Like, there's two ways of giving. One other program I'm very proud of, and what you got to see a little bit of the expo is we do a thing called Tucker's Teammates. And when you said Tucker lives on, it's amazing. His 16-year-old friends do a dollar drive. And what they do is they go around looking for hockey teams. And this is where all you hockey youth can get involved, because we want the kids to feel that I want to grow kids to be like Jason Zucker and all the King Clancy Award winners, where you feel that joy. They did what they called a dollar drive, where they asked kids to be a team leader for their team, whether it was Mite or Bantam or high school. And they said, just for a week or two, will you just ask for donations? Whether you just leave the jug or, a money jar in the locker room, whether you ask people in the stands, whether you ask parents, whatever you do. Kids some have gone door to door, some have raised $35, some have raised $1,000 that the parents match at work. But the dollar drive that last year was done by a 16 and 15-year-old friends of Tucker ended up having 28 teams involved and raised $21,000.
Wow.
And it was all kids taking 2 weeks one team had a perfect thing. They had a gallon milk jug, and they just cut off the top and put Tucker on the side of it, which is all it needs to be, right? And they each took one night with it and went door to door, each player. So they had 12 kids on the team, or 14 or something. So for 14 nights, somebody else took the jug. And just by doing that, with kids going door to door, parents and people were motivated. They raised over $2,500 that team themselves.
That's amazing.
So I do it. So that's just one form of Tucker's Teammates. We have some that do a paint night. We have some kids that have done a garage sale. Some have done a bake sale or a lemonade stand. Whatever kids want to do, I say put the fun in fundraising. Like, Tucker would have never done a readathon because Tucker did not like reading. So at all. He would have been like, no. And so whatever is fun for that kid to do a fundraiser. Now, you hockey teams, if you could email me at dana@playlaughLove.org, and hopefully you'll put up all my stuff. Just let me know. So these boys do it themselves. Caden Finn, D. St. Hubert. They will personally contact each team leader. They teach them how to be a team leader. Then now we've made cool hats for them that they'll send up to these kids that'll be a team leader. We want it to be, statewide. We had a team from War Road participate, and we had one from North Dakota. We want it to be big, that these boys will contact you. And it's kids teaching other kids how to fundraise. And at those games, especially I do want to get out, and travel around. We have a VIP show up. The one that really motivated, these boys then raise this money and hand it to a VIP. A year ago, at the Dollar Drive, we had poor little Hafsa, who was a second grader and had a terminal brain cancer. And it was going to be her last birthday. For 7 months, she knew she was dying, and her single mom and little brother. And for her last, Team Tucker needed to do something for her. And I'm like, what could we do? Turns out even though she was 7, for the last 4 years, she had always wanted to go to Hawaii. So she comes to the game, these teammates, these 15-year-old boys hand her a check, and she gets on a plane. They covered her trip to Hawaii with her mom and her little brother, and she spent her 8th and final birthday in Honolulu, making a little sand castle, and came home, and they brought them so much joy. And those boys, now every year they want to come back and do it. When you see, you get to skate, you get to have 2 legs, you get to be healthy. So share that wealth, and then it makes you feel so good to help somebody who, is losing a leg or losing their life or 2 years in a hospital. So that's one way kids can help. Parents, you can just also go to, it's playlaughLove.org, or if you just go to Team Tucker, it defaults to playlaughLove.org. There's donations there. And also let me know if you know somebody in the community who needs to be a VIP. That at the expo last year, a mom started crying looking at my booth while her son had leukemia. And that's one of the families we sent to Duluth for a week because they hadn't had a family vacation. And now he's one of our VIPs. So we really want to grow kids doing fundraisers, and kids learning about how good it feels to help other people. And otherwise, straight donations, or get on our mailing site. I try to get information out about all our VIPs. And if you do know anyone going through anything, or if you want a motivational, uplifting book, yes, it's sad. But I was really compelled to write this book. I was asked to write it. It's just about how to stay positive, how to pivot. As a special ed teacher, I was diagnosing kids with learning disorder or on the autism spectrum, and helping families like, okay, this is your new reality. What modifications do you make, and how do we move forward? Yes, I cried a lot in private, but when my son found out he was going to be amputated, I had already looked up the Paralympics, and I'd already researched the 16 different sports available, and looked up Tom Abbott, who pitched without a hand. And I had already contacted people with prosthetics of Tucker, getting to go back to playing baseball with the prosthetic. So it's just, luckily I had been in a field where you get bad news and you have to make a variation and pivot, and move forward. So I would appreciate, this is a motivational book that I think I've gotten a lot of praise for families going through anything. And I just love helping these VIPs. When they pass away, I'm there for them. When they celebrate and ring the bell that they're done with chemo, we celebrate. And it's really just an amazing community that Tucker has established. I mean, it's his legacy. It's just his there. And the last thing, if you do have, if you run a business and could sponsor, our All-Star Party is September 9th. And always looking for anything, the first one is 1,600, because guess what? 16, our boys are 16.
Right.
We would put your business up and promote your business on our website. So looking for corporate sponsors. This has really grown. In 2019, we had 2 VIPs. The next year we had 8. 2021, I was like, wow, we might make it. We had 20 VIPs, and last year, oh my gosh, it's happening. We had 40 VIPs alone last year, and we're already got 15 this year. So there's so many sick kids out there that we can help. And I finally, for the first time, I've been doing this as a volunteer as I raise my 2 daughters, and I'm full-time. For 1 year, I got to make this big. I got to help these kids, and I need your help to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and one of the things that I'm going to try to do is, I've had a buddy of mine that I went to school with who had leukemia. He found out he had leukemia in 3rd grade. He is now a doctor out at I believe at the McFarland Clinic in Iowa, in Des Moines, or Ames, just outside of Ames, I think.
Yep.
I've been trying. I've sent a couple emails. Haven't heard anything back yet, but I'm definitely going to try to link them up with you.
Yeah,
So that way, because I
and that's
know.
we help anyone. Obviously, Kyle from Uganda. We do have 5 from Iowa. We find them on TikTok. We're helping somebody
Yep.
in Ohio right now.
Yep.
We Arkansas. We want to help kids while they're battling. We want to get them through to
Yep.
that finish line. And if they don't make it to that finish line, we want them to be, surrounded by family to come say goodbye if that's what we need to help with.
Yep.
But we
And
will be there.
Yep. And with him being a doctor now, and having gone through that, I think this would be something that he would definitely be able to help you guys out with.
I know it's leukemia does have a good rate of survival, which is great. And people ask if I get depressed being around all this cancer, and I think and it's funny because 5 years ago I'm like, I'm not ever going to go near childhood cancer. It's too painful. But just to know I can do something, and I get they all send me pictures of them smiling, and even Hafsa, who the mom. The greatest thing I can do is the mom said in Hawaii, she said, for a few hours we forgot. Like she was just playing with her kids on the beach. And that's, if we can't fix the cancer, your friend can, but we can bring them joy and we can help them play, laugh, and be surrounded by loved ones. And, and it's just neat that everyone still knows about my son. I feel connected to him. Kids at the Little League field, they're like, I actually know somebody who knows Tucker. And, Jason still talks about him, and he's just going to be, I was dealt I'll take my son anytime, even though I had to let go of him. He's one of a kind. And we always talked about doing something together, and I thought it would be side by side, but it's above and below, but we're here and we're going to help kids. And I appreciate your help in letting me help more kids.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, when I went through that in third grade, it kind of just stuck with me. And then then hearing your story, and I'm just like, it's either time it's time to start giving back a little bit more. Now that I'm broadcasting instead of, I had to retire from hockey back in 2015, and then I didn't even step foot in a rink until 2 years ago. So I had been out of the game for almost 7 years before I actually stepped back in, and it was just one of those times where it's like it's time to like get back into the couple of things that you truly love.
Right. And the hockey community is amazing. Well, it's interesting that you were in third grade going through it too, because that was Tucker's age. And I still have a birthday party for him every year. So he was at a charter school, a Spanish immersion school. And so there was 45 kids per grade. And I have a birthday party for those kids every year, or for Tucker every year on his birthday. And out of those 45 classmates, every year between 35 to 42 can make it.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they come every year.
He's still touching the lives of everybody.
Yeah,
like you said, 6.5 years later, and it's it's an incredible story.
Yeah, he is, and beside the new kids that think they know him, and that's the amazing part with that dollar drive. It's 3 buddies to do it, and then I end up like talking to these other guys. They have talked and heard about Tucker so much and seen him in the shooting room. They feel like they know him. They can relate to his story. But no, the teachers at the high school have said they've noticed something about that class. That class is going to make changes. Tucker, they left an open chair for him at their 6th grade graduation. I'm still in contact with most of them. They're still wearing Team Tucker hoodies. In fact, I just had supper with one of them. They had to go through a lot of counseling. He just was somebody who forever if you met him, he made an impact on you. And like you going through it in 3rd grade, that's the other thing is they did their crying, and now they're going to make the world a better place because of Tucker. And that's one of my, I don't know which ones will go into medicine because of it. I don't know which ones will go into, nonprofits, but he was so fun. And so he was everyone's favorite. In fact, in 1st grade, and then I know we got to end it, but 1st grade, the lesson was, they were doing a unit on what's the difference between a right and a privilege. And 1st grade is 7-year-olds. And so the assignment was, the morning message was, write your favorite privilege here at Isla, the name of the school. And 7 kids wrote their favorite privilege at Isla was getting to play with Tucker.
Oh, that's awesome.
Out of 22 classmates, like 7, like that's their favorite part of their day is gonna go to school and play with Tucker.
That's amazing.
And and when he did have his leg immobilizer on in 3rd grade, and he had to give up recess until we could fix the cancer, which ended up being amputation. But kids argued and begged. First, his buddies would stay in for recess, but then then the girls were frustrated that they didn't get to, and then the other classes were frustrated. We ended up having to do a lottery system, and your name had to be drawn each day for who could skip recess and sit inside and play Uno with Tucker. And then it was so people waiting and frustrated till it was their turn again. We broke it into one kid could sit with them for recess, and one could sit with them at lunch. And because he couldn't even be around Jocelyn or at lunchrooms and Fayed, and kids would beg to skip Fayed to just be with Tucker. They just wanted to be around him. He was just a great, fun kid. So I hope you read about him. Order the book at Play Laugh Love, and I will send the copy out to you. It's some sad stories, but a lot of funny stories. You get to read about Jason and their whole friendship, and just how my son and I kept smiling, found there's nothing we can't do. And he passed away, and I still live by that. Now I think I was his strength while he was battling. And now that I'm the mom, he's my strength to keep going and to take care of his 2 sisters that he loved more than anything. And so the 3 of us are just living for our little boy whose favorite color was orange. And he sends us great orange sunsets, and we know we're doing it, making him proud.
Yeah. And it shows. And like I said, it doesn't just end. It keeps continuing, and it grows each year. I'm actually wearing my Team Tucker bracelet right now.
I saw that.
Yeah,
yep. And I'll send those out to anyone. And kids, just be grateful for your 2 legs and be happy and do good things for other people. Because it feels so good when you help others. And just remember that, there's nothing we can't do, and we can always help other people. And I appreciate you so much for having me on. And I can't wait till.
Glad you came on.
Yeah.
So now with that, we're gonna end this episode. But before we go, I'm gonna ask you, who do you got winning the NCAA championships tonight? It's got Quinnipiac against Minnesota.
Yep. Oh, of course it's going to be the Gophers. Wow. Did you see them yesterday? That was an amazing day.
5-2. Yeah.
Yes. Well, empty netter, but 4-2. Well, tied in the 3rd. Yeah. The Gophers are amazing. Hockey is just part, it's so funny. I don't know if you were surprised when you came to the expo, but,
yeah, I was.
Well, I remember the guy in the booth next to me was from New Jersey, and he's like, wait a minute. Why are there so many? What are we doing? I'm like, this is just people coming from all over the state to come watch hockey. And he's like, isn't it a school day? I'm like, it's hockey. Yep. And he's like, no, these parents are letting kids skip school. I said, yeah, my daughter's at the game right now. It's a Thursday. Yep. I'm like, some people have religions, and they miss school for the religious practice, and Minnesota has hockey, and we miss school for hockey. I mean, how many days my girls have missed, but no. And so every time, like, oh, we came over from North Dakota for it. We came up from, and it is the state of hockey, and Minnesota has a team that's on fire. My brother played for a pretty big school here, and a lot of his friends went through the U of M program. And so, that's going to be exciting to win. And then we got to get the Wild. I was very happy that Pittsburgh beat us Thursday night, because otherwise they wouldn't have gone to the playoffs. So I'm still cheering for Pittsburgh because I love Jason. But the Wild definitely will be in the playoffs, which is great. And for once, Tucker can do a lot. He helped Jason get those 33 goals, but for some reason, even with Tucker up there, he cannot get the Wild through the first round of playoffs. I don't know what that is. Well, but man,
who are they projected to play against this year?
Well, that's the problem. We've now just slipped the last 2 games because we were in first place, and with Golden Knights being 3rd place, and we lost to them twice. And then now we just lost to Penguins, so now we're in 3rd place. Okay. But so 1-2, so we don't know. Won't
have to run through the buzzsaw that's the Avalanche now, do you?
Oh, well, that's the. I don't know, but that's
Yeah,
the
because I
scary
think
part.
Colorado's #1 right now. Like they
Yes.
just moved into first place in the
Yes,
Central
and
Division.
I know we play tonight at 7, and the Gophers play tonight at 7. It's so much, and then Jason plays at noon. Yeah, those are my three teams, and well, my only because my daughter, who also plays hockey, her season's done. But oh, and I go to a lot of Tucker, and that's a neat too. Talk about Tucker living on. His team always makes a jersey for me to wear, and I still go to their games, and they put the name Tucker on the back. So I still go to those games. But no, I think the Gophers for sure. I have more confidence in the Gophers winning tonight than I do in Wild getting to the second round of playoffs. But God, Spurgeon deserves it. He worked so hard back there. Well, and then we got to get Krill back, so that'll help. But now we might have just lost Dak. So I will be hoping for the Wild, but I've learned to not get my hopes up for the second round of playoffs because it's always crushing.
Become a Lions fan where they anticipate great things every year and then just disappoint.
Oh, well, hello. Have you met the Vikings? I gave up on the Vikings a long time ago.
Right,
That's just too much. That's just
Well,
too much roller coaster.
now-
At least the Wild,
now-
we win and get to the playoffs every year.
But your quarterback, Kirk Cousins, he
Yeah.
actually lives right. He's from right down the street from me.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
they do.
It's like a 15-minute drive south, if that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. I barely. Plus that's during hockey season, so I really don't have much time for football. But hockey
Right.
season first, and then my other daughter's a gymnast, so that's year round. And yeah, so we keep busy with the rest of us. But yeah, no, Gophers 7:00. I know I got to be done with all my chores by then to turn that on, and then
For sure.
hope that we. Yeah, I think they'll win it. Don't you?
It's going to be close. Quinnipiac is. They just took out Michigan, which Michigan had the youngest team but the highest scoring offense. So it's going to come down to defense, and I think both teams scored quite a few. Like I think they both scored 2 empty net goals.
Yeah.
So it's going to be close. I'm going to go 3-2. I'm going to go Minnesota.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I do think it'll be close. Yeah, because it was 2-2 at the start of the period too.
Yeah,
And-
it'll be 2-2 going into the
Third,
third, and I think
third,
there'll be
just like
a
last time.
last 2-minute. It'll be a last goal in the last 2 minutes of the game.
Yeah, I know. I can't even imagine being a goalie. It's one. Yeah, a goalie's mom would just
Crazy.
be so stressful. The stress of it all, but but
I'd be
that's the
pulling
cool
out my
thing about-
hair.
Yeah, exactly. Is that what you were, goalie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was a center.
Oh, I
So-
wanted my daughter to be center. But yeah, isn't it just hockey is just the best community, and that's where it's
It really
it's
is.
such a family. Like you guys walk into Minnesota Expo and you're like, we're like, yay, more hockey people to talk to.
Yeah.
And
It really is. It's just a huge community. Everybody loves everybody. I mean, you're
Yes.
competitive, but you're competitive on the floor or on the ice,
Right.
and then once you step off, you're family.
oh, I know.
And that's what I
and-
love about it.
Well, and
'Cause you can-
not to get sad again, but just when any hockey player dies, that horrible bus accident up in
Humboldt,
Canada
yeah,
2 years ago.
Humboldt, yep.
Yeah, my kids are putting the sticks out. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. Like you just feel a loss in your own community, even though And we had Jake Jablonski here with the paralyzed neck. That was down the road from us, and
Yeah.
the whole hockey community cares about him. And, that's how my Team Tucker Play Laugh Love, Jason giving us the nod that first year and helping us start out, I got to meet Spurge, which, Spurgeon is 5'7", right? Did
No,
you
I
know
don't
that?
know, but no.
Oh, Jared Spurgeon, one of the best defense in all of NHL, but he's only 5'7", and he was with Jason the day we met him, and he's so little that my little nephew at the time was 5, and he started calling him Little Baby Spurge. So we always call him Little Baby Spurge, but
That's amazing.
yeah, and he, still and the Wild is still one game a year. Like they'll get me tickets to see Jason at those things, but no, it's just and that's just part of it. We do have VIPs that we're hockey players or are hockey players waiting to get back to it, and and every sport has a community, but there's nothing like hockey. You just feel it. You just feel when some hockey player goes down, has a horrible accident, or is out of the game because of cancer. That's the neat thing too. Whenever I go and talk at a hockey game, it's the away parents that come up and give me hugs. They're like, I'm so sorry for it's and that's where we do the most good too. And I just love the King Clancy Award, where we're looking at what can we do off the ices and be good. And that's just it too. NHL players are such good role models on and off the ice. It's just amazing. And I'm so glad that Tucker got me these great friends, and Tucker and Casey are both big hockey players. And, and I'm glad Jason brought us into the world, into that NHL world. And then like meeting you guys, I'm like, we can just sit and talk, it's just
talk
great.
Hockey all day. So
watch hockey. And I know I wish I just had all the channels and nothing else to do, but I got kids to help. So
right. So all right. Well, with that, I'm Ben W. Stock with my guest, my special guest, Dana Anderson-Hellstrom. I want to thank you so much for coming on the pod. I appreciate it so much.
Yep. And one more shout out. It's the playlaughLove.org, where you can get the book, you can donate, you can learn about the Tucker's teammates, on how your children can become fundraisers and have fun. And you'll see a gallery of all of our VIPs. Well, we have about 50 of them up there. It's hard keeping up now, but you'll see all the kids we're helping and the families we're helping. And lastly, if any of you out there do have a child battling any life-threatening disease and you need some help and some resources, again, go to playlaughLove.org. You get a VIP request form, and I'll be helping out you and your family when you're in need. And I appreciate anyone who can help me help them. So thanks again.
Yep. And we'll have all of that information in the interview. So we'll make sure that happens. All right.
Okay. Awesome.
Thanks, Dana. I appreciate it.
Thanks.